You know what's going on in this Premier League Manchester City legal chaos. Well, we're going to try and break some of it down today. There's injury news, transfer updates, believe it or not, in October, and more in today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. Apologies for the slightly late start. I was doing some reading on a lot of things. It's weird, like it's a lot of news dropped in the hour before setting up this show. I actually had to change the thumbnail, change the title, of course, because Thomas Partey's news dropped only a few moments ago as well. So apologies for the slightly late start. It's been a hectic hour before going live. So do accept my sincere apologies for that. And do so by dropping a press on that thumbs up and the like button. That would be incredibly appreciated indeed. If you could drop a subscription too. If you're new to the channel, first time joining us perhaps over here on this platform, do make sure that you do indeed drop a subscription. That'd be very much appreciated. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Maximir, Sarasilki, Jitty, Brendan, Paul, Graham, Steve, Olawale, Pikahu, Trina, Runs with Cows, Chad, Jose, Barry T, Jalali, Paul, Loga, Stephen, James. We've got Colin. We've got Brad, I see Matt G in the chat box as well. Mr. Rads, Matt Penn, Francois. Good morning to you all. Thank you, as always, everybody else too, for tuning in. You were all incredibly humbling to be here. Right, let's jump into this, which is the Premier League released a statement yesterday, as did Manchester City, regarding the APT, the Associated Party Transactions ruling. And it's hella confusing. It's what it is. Now, of course, this is an ongoing legal situation, which obviously creates dynamics and barriers and obstacles when talking about this stuff. So I'm going to heavily rely upon reading from other people to make my position absolutely watertight on this. Plus, I don't think you really want the opinion of someone who's not a financial expert, nor, despite having a law qualification, a legal expert in these specific terms for this case. So I think it's better off to read from people that know more about what they're talking about. And I often go to Tariq Panja of the New York Times when wanting to get kind of a rounded view on these types of things. He actually reported on September 26th that Manchester City's attempts to challenge the Premier League's associated party rules and border decision-making structures seem to have failed. Beyond potentially tiny concessions related to a database, it seems the club has secured very little at considerable expense. That report came out on the 26th of September, and that was the day in which a lot of reporters actually here, and I think based elsewhere in the UK, reported that Man City had actually won certain elements. Now, we have a lot more information at this point as well. But Tariq Panja reported yesterday on social media saying, as suspected, after throwing huge resources on challenging the Premier League, Manchester City appeared to have secured relatively narrow successes in the APT case. The APT rules simply revert to those that were agreed in November of 2021. There has not actually been a case involving new rules. The two changes the tribunal, the independent commission, has demanded to relate to the shareholder loans as part of the APT calculations and the onus on clubs to prove that APT transactions are at a fair value. So when you start seeing certain content creators saying this is going to blow the doors wide open, this is going to create loads of problems, this is going to be a situation whereby loads of clubs can just kind of inflate sponsorships and all this, don't quite lose your heads just yet, because as Tariq points out, this is just a reversion to the rules that were agreed in November of 2021, and that the some of the new and only certain aspects of the new kind of set of rules were found to be unlawful. This also doesn't mean that the Premier League can't introduce new rules that are deemed lawful in the future to tighten up this situation even more. So it's not this major victory from the perspective, from my opinion, looking and reading from what Tariq has said there, it's not like my opinion that there's been kind of this major issue that's then like a big win. Anyway, carrying on, the claim that the Premier League was against state owners from the Gulf rejected as was the way the league makes decisions, after City claimed it was the victim of the tyranny of the majority. That was then obviously tweeted out with the two statements from both the Premier League and Manchester City. And Tarek continues by saying, no doubt now that each side will try and spin this as a major victory, whereas the truth is probably more prosaic than that. Given that the panel has ruled the Premier League has to set aside the fair market calculations of a bunch of deals, they will now have to re-evaluate under fairer procedures that will now have to be determined. City did not have the opportunity to challenge the calculation early in the process. You can, of course, go over to Tarek's Twitter feed at Tarek Panja, Panja, to read all this. And they tweets kind of the panel reaffirming the need for these calculations, pointing out that the competition would be distorted and the recipient club would be benefiting from a subsidy from associated party. So APTs are indeed still here to stay, just not in the format that was initially seemingly proposed in this new format. What's also interesting about this that Tarek describes is that we also get a formal declaration of how clubs have aligned. Much discussed, but now on paper, Everton, Newcastle and Chelsea provided witness statements in support of Manchester City, while Liverpool, Manchester United, West Ham, Arsenal and Brighton have backed the Premier League. So we have this now in writing, which is very, very interesting indeed. And we kind of see perhaps the split of where certain clubs are standing. This is continuing the tweets. Curious background to one of the two wins City actually secured. They were one of 19 clubs that agreed shareholder loans should not be included in the APT rules. In this thrown kitchen sink at it case, they argued the other way and the panel agreed. In sum, City successfully secured wins in 2 of its challenges and failed in 6 of its claims over APT rules and how the Premier League works. Bigger thought, perhaps, the competition law once again coming to the fore in a sports case. We've seen it in the Diarra, FIFA v Agents, Live Golf, and European Super League in recent times. One of the lawyers, Simon Leaf of Mishcon, at the Law in Sport conference in London today, great timing indeed, said the following to the BBC. The lawyer is an expert in regulatory matters in English football. So this is taken from the BBC website. Simon Leaf, partner and head of sport at law firm Mishcon de Rea, told BBC Sport, whilst the decision will be embarrassing for the Premier League because in a couple of narrow areas their rules have been found to be unlawful, generally speaking, the decision confirms that the vast majority of the APT rules are indeed lawful. Therefore, whilst we can expect to see some changes to the rules going forward, on the whole, this isn't a resounding victory for Manchester City by any stretch of the imagination. One question, Tarek continues by saying that the case raises why these companies from the UAE would want to pay above average rates for sponsorship for a club that has consistently said it is not owned by the UAE, but is a private concern of His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan. So that's Tarek's view. And I always as I say, I go to Tarek Panja a lot when it comes to this stuff because he's far better at than I am at kind of summarizing it and taking it apart. So I recommend you go over to his Twitter feed and give it a read, and it will give you, I think, a better understanding and maybe a better view of this whole thing. If you have questions on this, I'm probably not the best person to angle them towards because it's not my area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination, which is why I read from other sources on this. But I just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over the whole chaos of yesterday by any stretch of the imagination, give you some of the insights some of the people that are more in the know are certainly talking about. Moving more towards our Apologies for that. Apparently, we just lost internet connection out of absolutely nowhere. I'm hoping that I'm back. I'm hoping that you can hear me. I don't know what happened. I just all of a sudden no internet was on. My laptop decided to turn off the Wi-Fi. I'm getting a new laptop soon, so hopefully that will sort that out. Apologies. I'm back. I don't know where I finished. I don't know where I don't know where we ended up, but we're hopefully back now. So yes, I think I ended talking about the Manchester City thing. As I said, I didn't want to skip over it. I didn't want to leave it. I wanted to make sure that we were talking about it. and I wanted to highlight people, of course, that know a lot more about this topic than I do. So yeah, that's the Manchester City side of things. The Gabriel Jesus story, however, which is what I was moving on to before my internet decided to cut out. Arsenal apparently received a offer from Palmeiras and have knocked this back. Of course, the different transfer windows around the world remain open in certain areas of the world, but Arsenal are not interested whatsoever in allowing one of their key players to leave. No matter what people's thoughts are on Gabriel Jesus at the moment, from kind of a squad perspective, it would be utterly insane for Arsenal to allow one of their players to leave outside of the English transfer window timeframe, and so rightfully have turned down this offer from the Brazilian club. And there is not an expectation, of course, that that will be indeed accepted, unless, of course, it happens in January, in which time Arsenal may indeed be able to replace Gabriel Jesus. But until then, it would be madness for Arsenal to do that. Couple of injury updates for you. Kai Havertz, the injury, of course, which was described to be a knee problem, reported by a number of sources, including Charles Watts and Sammy Mokbel. Suggestions are that this, and Jordan Campbell as well, The Athletic, that this is not expected to be a serious problem. I hope it's just more, and from the sounds of it, it seems more precautionary, and it seems as though that is the situation we find ourselves in regarding kind of Havertz's injury, in inverted quotation marks, I think is probably the best way to put it. The big story that dropped, however, before I came live and then kind of put together the show, which meant I had to change all of the headlines and all of the thumbnails, is regarding Thomas Partey. Now, our good friend Charles Watts has reported on his website, reading from the website, fresh on the heels of Kai Havertz pulling out the Germany squad due to injury, it has now been announced that Thomas Partey will not join up with the Ghana squad during the international break. An update released by the Ghana Football Association on Monday said Thomas is unable to join the Black Stars due to medical issues he is currently experiencing, and his club has scheduled him for further tests in the coming days. Charles continues by saying, my information is that Partey is suffering with illness, and it was thought best that he stay in London during the international break rather than during travel. So when you see kind of these injury, and that's why I put it in inverted quotation marks in the thumbnail, it's just to clarify on this, it's not an injury, it is a medical issue, and he's ill. That's why he's not joining up with the squads. Everyone's sick. I've been sick. Now Thomas Partey's sick. That makes it sound like I might have. For the record, I have not come into contact with Thomas Partey in the mix zone. I just want to make that very, very clear. In the last 2 weeks, I've not seen him in the mix zone. So making that indeed very, very clear. It's not my fault. I swear, it's not me. It was definitely not me. But yeah, everyone's getting ill. There's a bug going around, and it seemingly is that everyone's getting it at the moment. So I wish him all the best. International man flu, says Logan. That seems to be the case. International man flu, indeed. So hopefully this is fine. No worries about a serious injury or anything. Just that there is an issue that is keeping him out of playing, which is, as we're told, to be illness at the moment. So there you go. What is certainly not an illness and is certainly a benefit to you is, of course, the excellent provisional service that NordVPN can bring you and yours whilst surfing the net online, going around perhaps some local open Wi-Fi sources, maybe in your pubs and cafes. If you want a public Wi-Fi source, you need to make sure you're using a VPN to keep your data safe. And NordVPN, of course, is the #1 service to go to. And you can get a 1 or 2 year plan and 4 months extra thrown in free on top of the latter by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan. As I've mentioned, there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can change your geolocation on your laptop, your mobile, or indeed your tablet devices. It's a must, so make sure you go and grab it. Now, those that were in with a chance of winning the Gabriel Martinelli shirt are indeed locked in, because to my knowledge, this has now sold out. So best of luck to all of you that got involved with the latest Football Prizes competition, and I am very happy to bring you information of a brand new prize that is now available for you to go and get your hands on, and that is a dual competition. You could potentially win and be in possession of a signed and framed Patrick Vieira and Gilberto Silva. I'm struggling so much with that. A dual Patrick Vieira, Gilberto Silva signed invincible midfield frame that you can, of course, win. Link to get this is down in the competition page in the description. More than 450 tickets has already sold for what is an unbelievable price. It will sell out potentially today. It has been that popular. If you do not get the remaining 143 tickets that remain, less than a quarter of those tickets that are now left, you will regret it. So don't miss out. It is UK only, as I should always point out. But yes, it's a great prize, and best of luck to all of you that are getting involved with it. Right, let's go to part two and your questions right after this. Okay, this is part two of the show where we go into the chat box and tackle your questions. You can see the connection's fine. I don't know what happened there. My Wi-Fi on my laptop decided to just turn off for no reason. Technology today, you can't rely on it. It's absolutely ridiculous. Right, let's jump into the chat, shall we, and tackle some of your thoughts. Voos says, Tom, my feeling is Mikel and the players know how tough the run into Christmas will be, and I think I may be coming down with something too. Of course, there is another international break in November, is worth pointing out, that still is yet to come. So that is something that we need to consider as well. Vivian says, which of our players are on international duty? Fantastic question. And I wrote an article about this yesterday, so you can find out exactly who is on international duty with their team. So for England, we've got Bukayo Saka and Declan Rice. They're taking on Finland and Greece this week. For Spain, David Raya and Mikel Moreno are taking on Denmark and Serbia. Gabriel Martinelli and Gabriel Magalhaes are taking on Chile and Peru. For Brazil, Ricardo Calafiori has been called up for games against Belgium and Israel. Poland's Jakub Kiwior has been called up as well, indeed, to play Portugal and Croatia. William Saliba is with France to take on Israel and Belgium. Ghana no longer have Thomas Partey. He will not be with the squad. And Belgium, of course, have Leandro Trossard to take returns to the squad. He was left out of the last squad. He'll be taking on their games against France and Italy. So plenty more to come from terms of football, which means there's a lot of players remaining with the team before, of course, we come back after the international break. In fact, there are 12 players in total that are staying with Mikel Arteta. There are the injured players, Kai Havertz, Martin Odegaard, Kieran Tierney, Jurriën Timber, Ben White and Zinchenko. Plus now the ill Thomas Partey is also staying. Tomiyasu was not called up for the international squad. Neto wasn't called up for Brazil, which isn't surprising at all. Jorginho wasn't called up for Italy again, so he stays with the group. And Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling are both indeed with the squad. So that is all of the latest and all of the greatest updates regarding who and who isn't going to be on international duty over the next week plus. It's also worth pointing out that some games finish on different days. So for Brazil, their last game is on Wednesday, which is obviously really, really frustrating for Arsenal because it means that Gabriel and Martinelli will be flying back Wednesday night, not getting back till Thursday, which means they'll probably have one session alone on Friday before the game on Saturday. Whereas some games, Thomas Partey, had he been playing for Ghana, I think their last game was on Sunday or Monday, so it would have ended much, much sooner. So some of the games finish sooner than others, and players will be returning at different points. Let's go to Jamil says, what's happening with the 115 alleged financial breaches? Are these separate? If City gets off, I'd be fuming and would question the point of any adherence from other clubs to abide by financial rulings. So these are the APT rules. It is a different thing. So the 115 alleged financial breaches are something else. There's a lot going on in this case. It's massive, which is why it's taken so long. And people constantly asking kind of when are we going to get a result? Hopefully this gives you some indication of why it's taken so long, because it is absolutely mad at the moment. Evan says, now that we've seen Mikel and we've heard Arteta say, think of right and left midfield, do you think that we will see a pseudo double pivot with Rice and Marino, or do you think Arteta is hiding something of a ploy? I think that it depends upon the availability of certain resources. Odegaard being there or not being there changes the way in which we play. Trossard's presence in there, Waneri when he breaks in. It depends on personnel. I personally think that we won't see a double pivot. I think we will see Rice move to the 6th row. I think Moreno will move into that left 8 row and Odegaard will be the right 8 in terms of those positions. That's what I'm expecting to see. as well. Chris says, Tom, should we be playing a behind closed doors friendly during the break to get minutes into the legs of the likes of Neto, Tommy, Sterling, Jorginho, etc., as we also have a lot of youth players not gone away either? We sometimes play these behind closed doors friendlies, and I haven't got any information about whether or not we are going to. Sometimes we do, but sometimes we don't, as we didn't in the last international break. We didn't play one, and that's because obviously there's sometimes you don't have enough players available. Sometimes you have players, of course, even in the youth sides going off playing their kind of games as well, so it makes it much trickier for these games to be kind of sorted out. Should we? I don't think it's a necessity. It's something that we could consider, but it's not a big question mark. Mike says, transfer question from Sweden. What do you think of Brighton's Baleba as potentially a replacement for Partey and Jorginho? After a slow start to his life at Brighton, things have definitely improved considerably. He, of course, was the player that was brought in really in the long term to replace Moises Caicedo. He's definitely improving and adjusting to the Premier League. And if he continues on this pathway, I think he definitely will be one of the players that maybe could be considered by clubs to replace their defensive midfield or box-to-box midfield players. So, yeah, I absolutely think. Kyle says, Tom, why do you think that Man City were quick to put out a statement that they had won a case and, from your explanation of the Premier League, won more of the charges? Because that's just what you're going to do, isn't it? Like, you're going to put out, you know, the view that you have been successful in this scenario. That's just, I'm not surprised that that's the case. I'm not surprised that that's what's happened. That's just what would go down. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that side of things. I'm not surprised by that at all. It's not surprising in any way that they've done that. So you're obviously going to try and paint it as positively as you can. They have got a couple of victories, as pointed out, but it's not kind of the big story or the big win that some, I think, have painted it out to be. Evan says, thanks for your insight. Always appreciate your thoughts. Thank you, mate. Very much appreciate that. Daniel in the chat says, Tom, how would you integrate Waneri into the team more regularly before Odegaard returns? I think it has to come through gradual substitutions. There was definitely an opportunity, in my view, to start him against Southampton that we sadly didn't take. We could have taken it, but we decided against that. But yeah, I think that it's through increased exposure. We've got the Preston North End game, of course, coming up during the next period of games as well. Just having a quick check on when that is. October 30th, so the end of this month. It's the fourth game back after the break between the games against Liverpool and Newcastle. We have to go away to Preston and then go away to Newcastle, which isn't great for the travelling, but it is the reality of football, sadly. Juni says, Tom, one of Man City's wins in this new ruling is that they can now accept loans from their investors with zero interest. How do you think that will affect future transfer markets, Newcastle too? Of course, it's worth pointing out, Juni, that there is going to be further rehashing of rules, so it's difficult to have any kind of opinion on the case and the rule set as they are right now, because we do expect things to change even further, and the Premier League will likely implement tighter restrictions that can be deemed lawful, I guess, is probably what will end up happening. Avamon says Trossard is going to be playing against both Saliba and Calafiori in this break. You're absolutely right. He is. That is going to be happening. Damien says, do you think the Lassana Diarra ruling could be a big thing? I don't really know too much about this one. I'm just going to do a quick Google of it. So the Diarra verdict, a landmark day which could alter the balance of football power. So this is coming from The Guardian, which reads, it feels as if we've been waiting forever for another legal ruling that would not only change the face of football, but synonymous with a single professional player. This piece being written by Paul McInnes. At long last, we may have a new Bosman. The verdict delivered by the Court of Justice of the European Union, the CJEU, on Friday, aka the Lassana Diarra ruling, will almost certainly lead to significant change in the game. This legal process, which started 9 years ago, is still not finished. Ultimately, it will be up to the Belgian courts to rule whether key FIFA laws relating to the transfer market are a going concern. But given these final considerations must be made within the jurisdiction of EU law, and that the EU's top court has said that FIFA's rules in several respects go beyond, in some cases, well beyond what is necessary, we can assume that the status quo may well be in its last legs. Ostensibly, the case relates to what happens when a player's contract is terminated without just cause. This is what happened to Diarra in 2014 when he was playing for Lokomotiv Moscow. A dispute over performance and wages led to his contract being cancelled by the Russian club, with FIFA's dispute and resolution chamber, the DRC, finding against the former France midfielder and subsequently fining him. When Diarra subsequently struck a new deal with the Belgian club Charleroi, he was unable to complete the move, because a transfer permit would not be granted until the fine was paid. Furthermore, Charleroi would have been held liable for the debt had they sought to finalise a deal and potentially punished if they refused to pay it. This was an outcome the Belgian club decided they could not risk and therefore walked away from the deal. From this situation, the CJEU was asked to consider two details. First, whether the refusal of a permit restricted Diarra's freedom of movement, and second, whether the obligations placed on Charleroi and the potential for punishment restricted their ability to compete. On both these issues, the court ruled against FIFA. Even the world governing body's defense that such rules were necessary in order to ensure the regularity of sporting competitions were seen as insufficient because the court found the rules go beyond what is necessary to achieve that objective. FIFA now has one final chance to argue the differently when it makes its case to the Belgian appeal court, where this case is being heard, and the CJEU says the plea will have to be convincing. An exemption, if possible, is only if it is demonstrated by means of convincing arguments and evidence that all the conditions required for that purpose are met. It is argued in the judgment. You can continue to read, of course, that piece on the Guardian website. It goes into a lot more, but this is really interesting stuff. So this could raise a lot of interesting scenarios regarding kind of player contracts and the termination of contracts. We could think about the future of players talking about how there's too much football and player strikes and things like this. This could incorporate a lot of stuff. It's impossible to know really, Damien, like how big it can be, but this could be a very, very intriguing process that leads to a lot of changes in the way that football contracts and the way that players are able to kind of take control of their futures to a degree. So that is going to be very, very interesting indeed regarding the Lassana Diarra rule. TJR says it's potentially a contact minefield. Won't be a new Bosman, just means contracts and working conditions will need to be hashed out more thoroughly. Maybe grounds for player strikes, if not upheld. And basically, it should be proven that the Russian club didn't provide the best practice. I expect FIFA to win on an appeal, though. Well, it's obviously that's TJR's opinion. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, let's see, because there's so much legal stuff going on at the moment. It's kind of mad. It's kind of mad to see the outcomes of all of these things. We don't know what's going to happen. In a lot of them, we have got some ideas and people have got their opinions about this, but it's impossible to know what's going to happen. So it's going to be a big year in football legal terms. Eamon says, I'm late today, so will you be doing a special on the Man City verdict? I mean, when indeed the verdict on the 1-5 stuff happens, of course we'll do some stuff on that, and we'll try and get you some expertise surrounding it as well, because that will be a massive, massive story relating specifically to Arsenal as well. RRDM says it would be good to win the league before there is a judgment in the Manchester City case. We have a good chance to win it this season with a good squad, tactics and luck. Other teams are also better against City this season. I'd like that to be the case, of course, because you don't want to win the league and then it have kind of an asterisk next to it, if you like. But yeah, let's wait and see. That's all we can do. And I know I say that a lot on this show, but that is literally all we can do, is just wait and see. That is it. That is all that can happen. Speaking that can happen today is everything that we've spoken about, because I am going to be putting an end to the show there. I know there's been a lot of reading, and I know you've bared with me quite a bit throughout that reading today, but I thought it was important not for me to rabble on about something that I personally haven't got like the greatest level of expertise in, but instead read from the people that do, and to give you that information that you may not have found otherwise without me putting up here. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I thought it was much better to provide it in that format. But I understand that a lot of reading is not always the most exciting or engaging level of content for the channel, and it's not always what people turn up for. So do accept that this show was obviously going to be very reading heavy today, and I hope that it still brought you some level of the information that you've been looking for and gives you maybe a different view on what you've read already based upon the sources that we've talked about today. So if you could drop a like on the video, that would be incredibly appreciated. And if you would subscribe if you're new to the channel, welcome. We don't usually do shows that are as much reading like this. We often talk and have a lot of discussions about this. Potentially tomorrow morning, we'll be doing our phone-in show at 9 a.m. based upon the atmosphere at the stadium. I need to kind of gauge interest. So if you are interested, if you're going to be around tomorrow morning for our 8 a.m. UK show, and you want to have your thoughts on the atmosphere, why it's not as good as it has been, why maybe there are reasons for that, or maybe defending certain aspects of it as well, we're probably going to be doing that tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So I'll be opening up the phone lines to hear from people regarding the atmosphere and kind of ticketing issue as well, and all of those things. So let's join together on that, and I look forward to speaking to many of you on that show. Have a fantastic rest of your day. I should say, by the way, and I haven't talked about it in a long time, our live event, of course, which is dropping on February 20th of next year, which of course you can still get. As I was going to say, there are only, I had one person who sadly couldn't make it, and they were coming with a couple of friends. So there has been a couple more tickets put up on there that previously weren't available. So if you're worried that you couldn't get tickets for a group of people, be quick. Go onto the website now if they're still available and get them, because there's only a handful left thanks to that person that can no longer come with their friends. So if you were hoping to come and bring someone, now's the time to go and do it. The link to the tickets is down in today's video description for next year's show, Thursday, 20th of Feb in London, with a fantastic group of guests. So go check that out. Speak to you soon. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.